Hey everybody, so we have some breaking suspension news to talk about involving Tom Wilson. An independent arbitrator has reduced Tom Wilson's suspension from 20 games down to 14 games. So, obviously this process has taken a long time. Wilson has gone from being suspended to his original appeal to Gary Bettman, which was denied. Then he appealed to an independent arbitrator, and the arbitrator has finally come back with his decision, and he has reduced Wilson's suspension by 6 games. Now, it's only a 14-game suspension at this point. Washington has already played 16 games, so Wilson has missed more than the 14 games he was suspended for. There is no time machine. There is no way to get those games back for Wilson. So it essentially was a 16-game suspension, even though it was only been reduced to 14. However, Wilson does get the salary back from those 2 games, those extra 2 games that he missed, meaning he makes $378,048 back in lost salary. So almost $400,000. So this is significant not only in that he's now eligible to play immediately because he served more than the 14 games he was suspended. He also gets almost $400,000 in salary back, which financially is a pretty big deal. I don't care how rich you are, $400,000, that's a decent amount of money. So Wilson gets his money back from the games that he missed, that he shouldn't have missed, but he doesn't get, obviously, there's no way to go back and replay those games with him in the lineup. So his suspension was 14 games, it essentially was 16, and he is now eligible to play immediately for the Washington Capitals. The Capitals have a game tonight against Minnesota. I don't think Wilson's going to play tonight. That would be an awful quick re-entering of the lineup. I don't think he plays tonight, although I guess it is possible because he is eligible to play. I would think Wilson probably gets into the lineup their next game after tonight, which will be later in the week. What kind of shape is Tom Wilson in? That's an interesting question because I assume with him missing this much time, he probably could be sent to the AHL on a conditioning stint, but I don't think he would need to be. We saw Nick Ritchie in Anaheim was an RFA. He didn't sign until after the season had started, and then he immediately returned to the lineup. He stayed in shape with skating and was in fine hockey shape by the time he signed with Anaheim. I assume that throughout this suspension, Tom Wilson has been working out, staying in very good shape, skating, probably doing a lot of work on his own and drills and stuff. He's probably ready in hockey shape and ready to play at the NHL level. So I wouldn't expect him to need a conditioning stint or anything. I think he will be ready to go probably whenever Washington's next game is after tonight. I don't think they probably throw him right back into the lineup tonight. They probably wait a game and then he'll be back in. So I like Tom Wilson. I think some of his hits are definitely dirty. Some of his hits I think are actually clean and very good physical hockey. And I love physical hockey. I'm a huge fan of Tom Wilson's. Wilson needs to watch himself because he caught a break here. He caught a break with this independent arbitrator. And I don't know the reasoning behind why this suspension was reduced. I have not read the arbitrator's report on why they reduced the suspension. I would assume it would have to do with what other hits like this get for suspensions versus the 20 games that Wilson got. I mean, Brendan Lemieux, who is not a repeat offender when this happened, picked Vincent Trocheck's head in a couple weeks ago, caught nothing but head, and was suspended for 2 games. Wilson, who granted is a repeat offender and has been suspended multiple times by the NHL, hits Sundqvist in the head and gets suspended for 20 games. So you have 2 games on this end and 20 games on this end. That's a big, big gap, and that is probably played a part in why the arbitrator reduced the suspension, because the gap between what other players get versus what Wilson got was probably too big. Um, a normal repeat offender doing a hit like Wilson did would probably get 5 or 6 games. Wilson got 20 because it's Tom Wilson, and of all the hits he's made in his career. Um, so I would assume that that played a role in why the arbitrator reduced the suspension, because the arbitrator looked at the gap in what normal players get versus what Tom Wilson got and said that's just too big of a gap. We get that you're trying to punish him more because he's done this multiple times, but you've got to do this progressively here. You can't just jump from a 5-game or 6-game suspension and jump it all the way to a 20-game suspension. You've got to do this in progressively, more games each time. But Wilson still has to watch himself because he's obviously a marked man by the NHL. He's watched extremely closely, and if he does a headshot like he did on Oscar Sundqvist again, he'll probably get 20 games and it will stick this time. And he may even get 25, and that would probably stick as well. Because if he does this again, especially if he does it soon after being back into the lineup, then he's obviously not learning his lesson, and a much longer suspension will stick if he does it again. So Wilson needs to watch himself, and he still needs to be a physical player. That's the way he plays hockey. That's the way he should play hockey. That's the way more people should play hockey. The league needs more physical players. But he needs to be smart about it, and he needs to watch himself. Don't blindside guys. Don't pick the head. Wilson's biggest problem is when he hits, he launches. Sometimes he leaves his feet, and that will get you in big trouble this day and age. Sometimes he doesn't, but he still has that upward motion when he hits. He'll take his shoulder, and even if he doesn't leave his feet, he will come upwards as he's making the hit. In this day and age, you cannot come upwards when you make a hit because it looks like you're going after the head, and that's how you get in trouble. He needs to hit through the guy, square through them, not coming up at them. If he can... And it's just the way he hits. It must be the way he's always hit or the way he learned how to hit. But when you watch him throw big checks, he almost always has some sort of upward motion. Sometimes he straight up launches, and he'll leave his feet and go up. Other times it's just his upper body, but it's still coming upwards, and it's going at the chin or the jaw of the guy he's trying to hit, and you can't do that this day and age. If Tom Wilson played in the 90s and early 2000s, he would be a fan favorite around the league. He would be everybody's favorite player who wasn't from their own team. People would love him because he makes the game fun, entertaining. He's extremely physical. He drops the gloves. He throws massive hits. He would be on top 10 lists for, big hitters in the NHL and everything. He would be beloved if he played in the 90s and early 2000s. But he doesn't. He plays now. And now you have whiny people complaining about every hit. You have head contact being completely phased out. You can't launch yourself at somebody when you throw a body check anymore. Those hits used to be loved. They were spectacular hits back in the 90s. If you absolutely blew somebody up, if you knocked somebody out, you were a fan favorite. Scott Stevens was a fan favorite for just destroying guys in the middle of the ice. You can't do that anymore. You have to hit shoulder to shoulder. You cannot pick the head. And Wilson needs to learn to stay low and go through the body instead of coming up and launching at the chin or the head of the opponent. If he can still be a very effective physical player. He just needs to learn to go through rather than coming up at. And if he can make that subtle change in the way that he hits, he's still going to be one of the most physical players in the league and still be a very effective player, and he'll keep himself out of trouble. Because at this point, he cannot be making dirty hits. He's got to keep himself out of trouble. He can still fight as much as he wants. He can still throw big hits, but he's got to keep it clean. And I hope he does, because he is one of my favorite players to watch. He is an old school hockey player. He is one of the last very physical players left in the game, and I absolutely love it. I wish there were a lot more players like him still in the NHL, but he's got to keep his hits low. He's got to keep them shoulder to shoulder. That's all I've got on Tom Wilson. Suspension reduced from 20 to 14 games, so he is eligible to play immediately. We'll see when he gets back into the lineup. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. Check out offthewallhockey.com. All those links are down in the description. If you'd like to further support Off the Wall Hockey, the link to our Patreon page is also in the description. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.